Yo, it's X, and welcome to What's Out Media Group. Today on the show, we have an amazing musician, Johan Lenox. Johan, he has the combinations of what all the young kids love, like Beethoven, you know what I'm saying, mixed with, modern day music, man. Johan, how are you doing today, man?
I'm good. Got a show tonight in New Mexico, Arizona tomorrow. I'm just responding to messages and playing music. So I feel pretty good.
Word. So I caught you on your Twitch, man, and I was like, yo, man, let me see if I could get this man on. And I'm glad we were able to figure this out.
Oh
I
yeah.
saw you, I saw you last week in Dallas, and man, it was a treat, bro.
Thank you. Thank you. I was glad to be there. That was a good show for me.
Word. So let's talk about this, man. So you're from Massachusetts. Are you from Boston or like somewhere outside of Boston?
It's like 15-minute drive from the center of Boston. So like suburbs, but really close.
Got you. So what got you into music? Were you always into music?
Pretty much, yeah. I my parents had a piano in our house, so that was obviously a lucky thing for me, but they never really like pushed me to get into it. I just kind of would mess around on it because it was there, I guess. And Tried taking some piano lessons and didn't really enjoy that too much because I didn't like the structure of having to play other shit like perfectly correctly.
Right.
I'm just more someone who likes to kind of improvise or just come up with shit myself. So found out that there was there's a music school in the town I grew up in, just like a little music school people take lessons at, and I started doing lessons in composing music there instead, which kind of got me onto this path of being interested in trying to be like a classical composer. And then that was basically what I was doing for a long time until a few years ago when I got into this stuff.
Word. So even throughout like high school, like grade school and stuff like that, you were composing music?
In college, yeah, just that whole time I was just fully doing orchestra music, and I was getting paid for it too, like running around the country and going to see these orchestras and have them play my new piece. And it was cool. But yeah, obviously I ended up taking a very different path later, but yeah.
Word. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, very close to Cedar Point, man.
Oh
Let's
yeah.
talk about roller coasters, man. You were also a fan of roller coasters when you were younger?
Oh yeah, huge fan. Still am. I'm obsessed with that shit. I'm trying to figure out. We had a day off here yesterday, pretty much, and most of today, but there's no theme parks in New Mexico really,
Yeah.
or Arizona. So I don't. Yeah, but we did go to the Six Flags in New Jersey a couple of weeks ago when we had a day off. So
Yeah, all my friends from Jersey always talk about that Six Flags, man. So, what excited you about like what's the exciting aspect of roller coasters for you personally?
that's a good question. I think I like the physical just experience of being on one. Obviously, that's just fun as hell. But I guess like beyond that, I think I really like the sort of like theatricality of it. I guess it kind of reminds me of what I like about classical music and what I like about movies and musical theater and performing shit, on tour. It's just all very like big colors and loud and exciting. Like I just love making shit like that and seeing shit like that. And I love like Cirque du Soleil and stuff like that too. So I think it kind of fits in with all that too. And then I also just feel like I like, I don't know, it's kind of a theme on the album, but I'm really like I try really hard not to let my life become kind of like boring and repetitive in this sort of like monotonous, like adult way as I've sort of like finished school and just am a person, I guess. And I feel like theme parks keep me in touch with that more, just like youthful, just like abandoned, I guess.
No, I feel that. I feel that without a doubt. So you're composing music in
Yeah.
high school and whatnot. What school did you go to in college, and like what made you choose your college?
Oh yeah, nobody ever asked me that. I went to Yale for music. So it was a good school, I guess. And my parents wanted me to get like a proper education, I guess. And so I think that was the choice for me, was between like going to some type of like music conservatory versus going to like a a university where you study everything and meet people who do all sorts of different shit. And they just really wanted me to do that, so that I think pretty much the idea was just if music didn't work out, at least I'd have like a degree from Yale. So I think that was the hope. And luckily music has worked out, but it was cool. I mean, it was different. I think part of my interest, I've always been interested in pushing classical music into like the mainstream of American culture and pop culture. And I think being around a lot of kids who were doing shit that wasn't music was good for me, because it just kept that focus on like, well, how do I reach these people? I think, which is important, I think. So it was cool.
Right. So in Yale, were you in part of any, extracurricular activities and anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's almost all I did there, really. I mean, I went to class and stuff, but I really I put every free moment I had into like extracurricular shit. So I was in 2 different like singing groups, sort of a cappella type groups, just because that was big there, and I just wanted to be around other musical people. I also was in a choir, and I was in I started this group that was basically putting classical music in sort of settings where there was like much crazier light stuff and like really loud amplification. And like I tried to really make modern classical music like a thing on campus, I guess, with that group. And I think for a year or 2 we succeeded. Yeah. And then like we passed it on to kids younger than us who maybe weren't quite as ambitious as we were with it, and it eventually kind of fell apart. But well, for the time we were there, I mean, that was another good test of just like where I want to go with this ultimately. Like, I guess you didn't catch this because we've only done it in Boston and New York so far, but on some of the bigger Shake show dates, I've been doing this 15 or 20-minute classical set after my main set, where I'm straight up just playing like violin music and piano music with no vocals that I wrote. Yeah, and I wrote it all like the day before we left on tour, because that was basically when I found out it was happening. So it was a very, very terrifying day or 2, but we got it done, and it's just been cool, because that's really like, that really speaks to like my interest in the long term, which is just like putting that type of music in front of an audience that's younger and more excited and just really into it, and not just like old people who are there to like,
flash and oh yeah, wow,
very pretty nice, much, yeah,
exactly. I got you.
Yeah, exactly.
So you were in an a cappella group. Was this how you were in some TV show, some a cappella group band thing, right?
Yeah.
And what was that?
Yeah, there was a show on the SingOff. It's called the SingOff on NBC, which was like, yeah, it's sort of like American Idol for a cappella groups, which it turns out isn't really that's not a recipe for a hit show. I think they did like 3 seasons of it. It's like nobody cares, but maybe that's not fair, but that's sort of how I remember it. But my friend Kevin, actually, who also went to Yale, was in Pentatonics, which if you know a cappella, this is like the most famous a cappella group ever, basically. And I sort of helped connect him to the producers of that show. I mean, I think they were aware of him, but he ended up in that group, and they won, and then became like this massive sensation. But they were also on the SingOff. So that was season 3. We were season 2. And I mean, it was cool. It doesn't really it didn't have much to do with like what I'm trying to do now or what I was trying to do then, but it was just like a fun experience, and like spending a couple weeks in LA, and like, although we were like locked down because it's a reality show, so like they're pretty much like, they don't want you just like going out of the town, because they don't want someone to like get into trouble, or like, they don't want to fuck up their,
hey, I'm on this new show, man. Yeah, no,
all that shit. And like, or if just like someone gets too drunk or someone gets hurt or something, so they want to keep you really tightly controlled. So they pretty much just have you like locked down in the hotel, and then they can kind of like drive you to like meals and rehearsal, and like look the other way when you buy liquor to drink in your hotel room at night. But yeah, there's really like fucking nothing to do. But it was fun. And I mean, it was cool just to see how shit like that gets made, I think. I went to a taping of like James Corden with my girlfriend a couple of years ago, and that was really the only other time I've even been in a studio like that, where it's just one of these TV studios. And they're interesting. I mean, they really don't look like what you think they are. Like, they're just very like, I guess to contrast it to like live theater, because I used to do a lot of live theater in high school and college as well. Like live theater, it's like the thing has to work from beginning to end and just be entertaining, and there can't be any breaks in that. But TV, it's just like, as long as they get the shot, then they can just be like, all right, cool. And then you just sit around and wait. And there's just they don't bother with like having the transition make any sense. They just film the next shot they need. And it could be like 10 minutes while they change it. Like, or like, I was always wondering like, oh, we're going to perform our song on this show. And then where are we going to like exit afterwards? You know, like that's what I would think on a live theater thing, because you have to get off stage somehow. And the answer is nobody fucking cares. They just turn the cameras off and they just fucking leave. Like it's not a choreographed thing, because they don't have to, that doesn't need to be a part of the show. So it's just interesting seeing how much, and it's true with film too. And I guess music to an extent, but like the final product is just like, you just get it however you need to get it done. Like there's not like extra effort put into like this making it seamless if it doesn't need to be, kind of, just as long as the parts are there, that's all that matters. So
I got you. So when did you finish up at Yale?
A few years ago, not too long ago. Yeah,
I don't want to date you or nothing, man. That was not the intent. Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Cool. So composing wise, I have a question with composing. Yeah. I played an instrument. I played in a band, like a orchestrated band as well. So
yeah.
How can you figure out like these are where the strings fit in, or you know what I'm saying? How do you feel that out? Like as a full,
like when I'm working on other people's shit or with my shit, you're saying?
Even with your shit, other people's shit, like just in general, like how do you feel that out?
Well, I mean, with my stuff, I try to just make it like every part of the product. I mean, it's really like every single thing on my album that isn't a drum sound or an 808 or a vocal is live strings or live classical instruments. So sometimes it's a good question. I mean, there's been a lot of different ways that stuff ended up in there. Like some of the songs, it's like I started out with somebody in a studio and we did like a synth idea just to get something going. And then later I like replaced the synth with live strings or whatever. So in that case, I pretty much just wanted to replicate exactly what was there and just same notes, but just find the right instruments to cover it.
Yeah.
On my song, like Phases, there's this like vocal chop thing that I made that just goes like, and like that is my vocals. But then because that was in there, I was like, it'd be cool to have like flutes doing that too at some point. So I like, sometimes it's vocals, sometimes it's flutes, you know, but the inspiration came from this initial session. And like the string players, like basically you could probably find people who work more like on spec, but like I like to pay them properly and I use really good people and they know their worth. And so for the most part, I try to just kind of like hire them when I know what I need them to do and record it and then be done with it, so that it's like I can just pay them once for that session, kind of. Yeah. As opposed to like, let's say I'm working on an album for like several, you know, could be a year or two even. Like, you know, there's songs on there, whatever. It's like there might be like 200 songs that did or didn't get used for that along the way. And it's like if I had string players in every one of those sessions and was paying for them to be there, it's like it wouldn't really be affordable to have strings on the shit. So I'm usually trying to just find the song idea first, make sure I like it, and then sort of once I've really narrowed down the track, let's just go through the project and just find all the moments where I want strings or, you know, instrumentation or whatever. So a lot of times, like I'm already working on my second album right now, and I'm like living with demos that mostly don't even have that stuff on there yet, and I'm going to go through later and replace sounds and work it in. So I don't know. It'd be interesting. I mean, eventually, I guess if I get like really rich and successful and can just always work with live instruments in the studio, I guess, then that could be a cool part of the process, but it's just like not the most efficient way to do it for now. So I try to be strategic with it.
So do you just have like musicians just come in and sight read and be like, okay, can you help me out for this hour or this 2 hours or whatever? Something
exactly like that. Yeah. And actually, like even more now, like, I mean, it was happening before COVID, but especially since COVID, like I pretty much just fucking send PDFs to musicians and they send me the shit back from home. Okay. So it's like I don't even really get in the studio with them. I just get audio back and then I mess with it. And like the nice thing about writing classical music and writing sheet music and having musicians who can read that stuff is that if you know what you're doing, like you can pretty much just send them PDFs and they can just read it like a book and it'll be correct. So they don't they don't really, and I think that's something that most producers who use live strings and stuff like can't really do, because if you're in the studio, whatever, if they don't have experience with that, they need to get in the studio so they can kind of like, you know, like tell them, wait, no, do it this way, do it that way. But it's like that, luckily that's sort of what I studied my whole life. So it's like, it's easy for me to just be like, just here you go, fucking read it. And like 95% of the time, it'll be exactly what I wanted from the first take. You know, every once in a while, I'll be like, well, that wasn't really what I wanted. Either that was my fuck up or their fuck up, because like it was just, or it was miscommunication, basically, you know. But
I feel that lost in
I
translation.
yeah, and I try to get better and better with that. You know, like that's part of studying to be a composer or an orchestrator or arranger. It's just like every single time you're like, oh, okay. So when I write it that way, that really doesn't mean what I thought it meant. It means this to them. Okay, so now, so how do I write it the way I want? And they're like, well, I guess you could have said this or whatever, you know. So it's like that's kind of part of the journey, is like learning that shit. And a big application of that actually has been on this tour, and I mentioned it from the stage, I think, but like every show, those string players that I'm having on this tour are new and they're basically sight reading it, the sound check. So, and I send them the PDFs ahead of time just so they have it. But like for the most part, it's like, you know, there's like 2 or 3 spots I like to hit at sound check because I know they're trouble spots, but pretty much even in the show, they're pretty much just sight reading that show. And that's like, and that's only possible because we're all like professionals when it comes to that particular kind of skill set. So it's been cool.
That's really dope. And I think you did mention that. So I was wondering, I'm like, man, so these aren't like, they didn't come with them. Like they just showed up. They were like some Dallas people or something. I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's, I mean, it really like, it wouldn't really be even possible, like, you know, on a money level where I'm at right now for them to be traveling with me, you know?
Yeah,
like,
I know.
Like
I feel that.
Yeah. So it's cool. It's been a really good learning experience to just be like, okay, like what can I get away with? And the real test has definitely been on the shows where we've done that 15-minute classical piece where it's just like, and like we like extend our sound check by maybe 5 minutes, and we just run through my entire main set, which is 35, I think, minutes.
Yeah.
In about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe. Like once all the sound shit and all the mics and like earpiece, all that shit's good. I pretty much just run through the very beginning of every song on my set, hit 2 little trouble spots, and that can be done in about 5 minutes. And then we use the remainder of the sound check to just play this classical thing through once. And it's always been fine. I mean, we're doing it 4 more times in LA, but that's been really cool. Because if I can do that shit, then I can really, the stuff I want to do in the long run with like putting classical music on, you know, in these settings and stuff, that stuff can get so expensive. But knowing that I can just have people sight read it at a sound check means that like I could go kind of just run with that, I think, pretty far.
Yeah, without a doubt. It's super amazing, man. What were your thoughts on, like, I guess, new music, like when you were younger? Like, you know, were you only one of those guys that was like, yeah, I love classical music, like right. don't play no yay for me, don't play nothing for me, man, I'm out here just listening to like Beethoven or Mozart? Like, were you that type of person?
I mean, yeah, I think that like one thing that gets lost in that sometimes when people ask that question is that it's not very well known, but there are composers writing classical music today, which is what I was doing. And I was a fan of that stuff. And in addition to being a fan of like Beethoven, all that type of shit. So it wasn't like it was purely old music, but it was definitely like purely, yeah, like weird instrumental compositions and shit. I actually have a playlist on my Spotify. It's called Contemporary Classical Music, which you can see from my profile, which has some of the composers that I was listening to at the time, just some of my favorite sort of modern composers, some of whom I met or studied with, and you know they won like Pulitzer prizes and shit, and like they're killing it, but it's in a very small,
in a niche,
yeah, very niche, yeah, like nobody really knows about this shit, which is the thing I'm trying to change. But yeah, outside of that, I mean, there was like, I mean, I listened to a lot of Broadway stuff, so yeah, nothing like really cool or current, but you know, I was into like musicals, like Phantom of the Opera, all that type of shit, and then I was also into like very random selected bits of mostly older pop music. Like I knew a lot of Billy Joel stuff because I played the piano and that stuff's just good on the piano. I knew and still know like every Nirvana song ever, like really by heart, because my brother was a fan of Nirvana and had passed me down his CDs and shit. So that was like a weird exception, but none of the kids I was at school with listening to Nirvana because that shit hadn't been popular for like 15 years by that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, so it was just like weird, random shit like that. But I actually do. I mean, you saw, but I do a Nirvana song on the tour, which is because I wanted to do a cover. I was like, I should do like a cover with the piano, just someone to break up the set.
Yeah.
I was just like, what do I know that's cool that I don't have to rehearse because it was so last minute, and
Yeah.
like it's sort of a testament to how well I know that music. That I like never practiced that. I pretty much just did it at sound check on the first show. I was like, all right, good enough. Can we just So I mean that music's really close to my heart.
I feel that when I was in band, like I knew about like some contemporary like woodwinds and like our musicians and the horns and stuff like that. So like I get you on that. And then we would like if we knew of a say it again.
What did you play?
I played the clarinet and the saxophone.
Sick. There's a lot of clarinet on my album.
Yeah, no, I noticed the bass clarinet. Yeah.
Yeah. Sick.
But I would, we would hear things by sound and try to play them. Like it was goofy, but we used to love playing the John Cena theme song, man. It would be like me, like a trumpet or something like that. And we just hear it. We'd hear it off ear and just play, let me see if I can play this. So like, yeah, I get that with the Nirvana on a Nirvana level and all that. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's sick.
Word. So yeah, let's talk about it. So when did you actually get involved? When did you like hear like some, whoa, what is this? What's this music here? Like,
yeah. This is my friend played me My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, famous Kanye album, probably my favorite album ever. And it's just very personal for me because of the story. But like, he played me that at a house party in Massachusetts while I was tripping on acid, and yeah, that's pretty much what got me interested in that music. I mean, I was interested in it because it was just really monumental and just it sounded like shit I wanted to listen to coming out of classical and Broadway and all that type of stuff. And seeing that it had this kind of effect on my friends who weren't like in the classical world really was exciting to me too, as someone who's been trying to make that music hit a more mainstream audience. I was like, shit, like if people will listen to Kanye doing like one note on the piano at the beginning of Runaway or whatever, like that's not that much of a leap from that to kind of the shit that I'm already writing in the classical world, in my opinion, which is weird shit like that. Like what if someone just played one note on a piano for a minute? Like it's pretty much the same kind of impulse, I think. It's just sort of like interesting sound design, like textural, like, not everything has to have a melody, not everything has to have a beat, not everything has to be in a key even, so that that was sort of just like a big inspiration. And then what really happened was I spent like a year where I was still in school just listening to that album pretty much, but still doing classical shit. And it just took a while to kind of connect that, like, oh, like really if I just was a singer, recording artist, like, excuse me, I could like build a following that would hopefully be into this classical shit I want to do in the long run. So I kind of put that on the back burner and it was just like, I'm going to figure out how to become like a singer, a recording artist, like pop star, basically, which is what I'm trying to do now. So, which is also music that I really love. I mean, it's like, but it's like, and I love Broadway and I like a lot of different shit, but it's sort of, as a career, it's like, I'd like to do this shit and then I'd like to do the classical stuff sort of at the biggest level I can. And I think it kind of has to go in that order. Like it doesn't really, there's really no way that it could go the other way. Like if I spent 30 years of my life trying to be a classical composer and then at 50, I was like, oh, let me try to be a pop star now. It's just like not gonna, you know what I mean? But it can go the other way. So I think, I look up to people like Mike Dean, who is I think like 55 or 6, and he's killing it and doing
still grooving, man. Yeah.
And he's doing the type of shit I want to do. I mean, it's different, but I mean, in a lot of ways it's similar. And I think that is inspiring to me.
So do you think personally right now that you're in the right step? Like, do you think that you're going the right direction that you want to? Because I feel like, and that's just, I'm not trying to speak for you. I think you're doing exactly what you want to do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, no question. And I'm having a blast. And like, I wish there's always that like, damn, I wish I had like a hit song. Like, and my friends, some of them have had hit songs, but then some of them fell off really hard after that. And I'm like, shit, I'm glad that didn't, and I'm really lucky in some ways that I, didn't have that happen before I was ready. So it's like, it's tough. I mean, there is like an age limit on this shit, I think. And it's always in the back of my mind. It's just like, how many more years do you really get before you can really, take off in that way? But I think that's less true than it used to be. And I think, yeah, it's and certainly in terms of like where I'm trying to go in the long run, like the doing the classical set in New York and LA for Shake's show, that's like pretty much what I want to be doing with my life. It's a small version of it. I'm opening for her. A lot of people in the audience don't know what the fuck is going on, but some people are really feeling it. I'm really feeling it. It's a smaller version of pretty much what I want to do with my life. So it's like, that's fucking amazing. That's like some of the best, most, it's just really like a good reminder that like the shit is headed in the right direction. And there's like other moments that have been cool. Like I did this Kanye Beethoven thing a couple of years ago where I mashed up Kanye and Beethoven with a live orchestra. And like, I don't want to have to lean on the names of artists like Kanye forever to be able to do shit like that. Ideally, I could just put an orchestra concert up and people come to it. But right. It was sold out, and it was like the youngest and most diverse audience they've ever had at Lincoln Center where we did it in New York. And like, so in a way, that also did what I wanted a little bit, which is that we got a bunch of kids to come see an orchestra concert and have a good time. So it's like, and I have sort of some opportunities coming along that to maybe do stuff like that that's a little more ambitious. And you know, I've been talking about like, what if I got like James Blake or JPEG Mafia or someone to write a symphony, and like that's the next one, and like I think they would be down, and I'll help them sort of execute it, and like that to me would be like the next step for that concept, I think. And that also is just something that like I wouldn't even be able to do that if I wasn't doing what I'm doing right now and building my name in LA and in the music industry and shit like that. So it's really just like, is this an idea that helps me do what I want to do? And would I have been able to do this had I not taken the last 6 years of my life to do what I'm doing now, you know?
Without a doubt, it's training grounds, man.
Exactly. So yeah. So I think no question, I'm glad I did that, what I did. And like, I mean, I feel like it's only up from here.
What advice would you give to a younger Johan?
Good question. I mean, there was definitely like 3 or 4 years that weren't used the most efficiently. I think when I first came out, I worked really fucking hard, but it was just a lot of stuff that wasn't gonna maybe, I mean, a lot of it was just learning, but I don't know that I really could have done anything that differently. I don't know. I think.
You think you needed that? You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, to an extent. I mean, it's hard because like the biggest challenge I've really faced is just like I'm coming as someone who like basically was like living under a rock with respect to the type of music I'm trying to do full time now. So it's like I think most artists that start at like 18 or 19 as opposed to like 24 or whatever, like, you know, they've been fans of this music since they were 15. They've spent 4 years only listening to fucking whatever the shit is they're basically about to try to make. You know, they spent 4 years listening to Lil Peep, and now they're ready to kind of take the next step. And they're fans of other artists that also want to sort of push that sound where it's going to go next. And they just kind of do it. It's just right there for them. It's built into their entire, you know, view of the world and taste and shit. And I'm coming in like an alien, just being like, well, I like Kanye, but I've never really listened to hip hop. So I didn't really even understand the context of that album, really. I was just like, I fucking love that album, and then I love Jesus. But I really didn't even know the old Kanye, let alone all, you know, what Drake was doing or Kendrick. You know, it was just very like context read. I never wanted to be a rapper. I didn't think that was my path, you know. So it was like, well, I gotta be a singer. So what is like a singer who also does classical shit and is a huge Kanye fan? Like, what does that artist sound like? And that's not a path that exists, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, whatever. I think I get compared sometimes like Bon Iver and James Blake and Francis and the Lights, who are sort of also singers who also are in the rap universe. And I think those are decent comparisons. I mean, I think my music's pretty different from any of them, but there's elements of those guys that I respect. And I'm just rambling now. But yeah, I think the advice would just be like, just put more effort into like really studying the landscape of just what's happening right now. And this is kind of advice I give a lot of artists. Some artists don't have that issue, like I said, who just kind of grow up in it and just go straight into it. But a lot of artists, especially ones who like went to college, who like, you know, are good at music and trained in music, have like a really weird relationship to what's just current as well. And it's just like, you're not gonna succeed if you don't really understand the like musical landscape you're entering into and like how to fit into that, I guess. So I feel like I think just really immersing yourself in like what your peers are making is really the thing that's most important, that I just like really took like 5 years to figure out.
Yeah.
I mean, not completely. Like I wasn't just making like 90s style, R&B or some shit, but I wasn't like really paying that close attention to like I watched Brockhampton. I was at their first show ever. Like I watched some things and now they're done, I guess. But it's like I've seen some stuff like in its entire trajectory. I watched Post Malone come out with White Iverson. It was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And kind of wish I had maybe paid closer attention to that at the time instead of catching up to like 2 or 3 years later, which is what I really did. So I think just, being on the ground but it's also like, I'm thinking about what I'm trying to do 40 years from now and where the future of classical music is going. And it is somewhat hard, I think, to do both. Not that it's impossible, and now I try to do both, but I think keeping an eye on the future. And it's why a lot of artists flame out really fast. Like they ride a wave, they catch a trend really successfully, and then they don't really know where to go from there. And that's kind of it,
Yeah, exactly.
So I think I like am probably avoiding that happening, at least by taking a longer view, but it's a balance.
I feel that. Let's talk about a little bit. I know we got like about 10 more minutes here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about like your debut album. What were some of your favorite moments, and like what were your favorite, like, damn, that's all right. I didn't think it was something, oh shit, you know what I'm saying? Like any moments like that within the new album.
Like moments that I was just really excited to come up with, almost, you're saying?
Yeah.
There was some good stuff. I mean, one of the later things that happened was there's this dude Che Pope who used to run Kanye's label Good Music and is also a producer and just a great mentor of mine. And he was the one who suggested moving that song "What Happening" that's at the first song. That used to be like third from the end.
Oh, wow.
And it started with this kind of like short intro song, and then "I'm a Mess," and it was this kind of like poppier start. And I think it needed this sort of like darker, harder hitting beat, I guess, which is what that song I think has, or at least he felt that it had that up front. And then I rewrote the lyrics to make more sense with the story of the album. And I think that really reframed the album. So that was like a fun moment kind of towards the end of that. There was a good moment of realization. I mean, getting that Shake interlude, I had her on a different song originally on the album. And then we got back in and made that interlude and decided that was the move. And the album has a lot of interludes. That was a complaint a couple people kind of had in my DMs, not for the most part, but there's a couple people were kind of like, why are like half the songs on here like a minute long transition tracks and stuff? And like it never was really intended to be that way. But it's also like partly just because the album is supposed to flow like a continuous piece of music. It means that songs have these long outros or intros sometimes that kind of transition from whatever was before them. And then if you don't want people to have to listen to that every time they hear your song on a playlist, you end up deciding to just cut that transition into its own track. So that's kind of why there's so many of these short tracks, I guess. But I don't really think of them as separate songs. Like I really think of the album as just one continuous piece. But yeah, so I mean, the Shake one was definitely like an interlude that we added after already having like 5 interludes on there. But I do think it's a really cool moment that breaks up the momentum in an unexpected way towards the end. And with her, you never really know what you're going to get, like lyrically, like, or musically. Like she just wants to kind of take inspiration from where she's at. And like, you're not really going to be like, hey, so the song's about how I got high at this party and now I don't want to ever. She'll be like, okay, cool, let me do that. Some people will,
Right.
I will for the most part if you get me on a verse, but that's not really her style. I mean, she's much more just kind of like, here's what I'm vibing on today. And I kind of told her the story of the album, but she was just kind of like, yeah, sure. She's like, all right, well, it's almost time. Why are we fighting, basically? And she right. And then I was just kind of like, that actually makes perfect sense. And then she always just like, somehow it always works out that she just like, almost like subconsciously or like in some kind of like tapping into some crazy ass space shit that I'm not even aware of, like find something that is actually perfect. And it works perfectly in that point of the album because the whole album is about me trying to avoid growing up. And then to have someone at the end being like, it's almost time, like, why are you fighting growing up? Why are you fighting that? So it's like, it makes perfect sense. And then it also is a perfect setup to the last song where I kind of say like, okay, stop. I'm not ready. I don't know what I'm doing. and just don't wait for me to figure that out if it's driving you crazy. Like, I'm just gonna do it on my own terms. So it's actually a perfect setup for that last song in a way that just, yes, that was a cool moment when that came together, I'd say.
Yeah, man, dude, the message in your story about, like, do I feel like a lot of people are in that situation, man, of growing up and wanting to stay young, do all that stuff, right? So, like, without a doubt, I think the messaging, your music, and then adding the classical components, I think you're doing exactly what you're aimed out to do. I think it's going to reach a lot of people, younger people, and get more, classical music within, even just a little taste of it, man.
Yeah, and that's what this is, because I definitely don't think this album is like there's no part of it that I would really describe as classical music. The closest thing would maybe just be that choir shit at the end of the first song. Like, that is pretty similar to how I would write that if it was pure classical music. But like, most of these songs are like defined by having like looping chord progressions and hard drums and like melodic, vocals that repeat in like hooky ways, and like none of that stuff is what I think of as classical music. I mean, to me, classical music is so much more free and kind of not directionless, but sort of like just free to meander through like a really wide range of places over a long period of time. And like, I think some of that maybe applies to how I structured the whole album, and certainly like my skills for like writing cello parts and shit are also, present in the album. But it's definitely, as a principle, like what I'm trying to make on this album is a pop album with pop songs on it. And I think I always want to make that distinction, because when I do my classical shit, you'll know, because it's going to not be anything like this at all,
Word.
But it is like, yeah, I think it's a step towards cultivating an audience that I think will be down to be challenged by that. So that's the goal.
Feel that. Look, I got 3 questions.
Yeah.
I'll ask them. They're not even really rapid questions, but here we go. How was it like working with some of your favorite artists? Like, you talked about, you worked with Travis, you worked with Kanye. Did you work with Big Sean? Is that what you said?
Yeah, Big Sean I've done a ton with. I know him like decently well, actually. Like, I don't know Travis at all, and I've met Kanye every time. So yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to Detroit, man. I'm from Cleveland, Detroit. We got love for Detroit.
They love me, actually, and they're trying to get me back up there to do a show in Detroit. So I'm working on that. That was a fucking great show.
Without a doubt. Favorite roller coaster, man.
Shit. There's a couple. I mean, look, if you ask the real roller coaster nerds about this, there's like 5 or 6 that tend to be every one of, it's really, there's only 5 or 6 that everyone agrees are the best in the world. Of those, I think I've been on 2 of them, because I haven't been to Cedar Point yet. I haven't been to Kings Island yet. I haven't been to Carowinds yet. So, but I have been a Great Adventure a bunch of times in New Jersey, in El Toro. It's a gigantic wooden roller coaster there. I made my live show, like my tour group kind of run with me there, and they had a great time. It was fantastic. That shit is fire. So I'd say that's like probably one of the, it's just such a bizarre ride.
Word. What advice would you give to young creatives, man?
Yeah. Shit. I mean, that's like a wide, broad question. It's hard to say. I think just make a lot of shit. Usually the first stuff you make isn't very good, and it stays that way for a long time. So it's good to just be able to power through that and just make, just be okay with making crap kind of while you're learning how to do it, and just surround yourself with people that are also trying to do this shit, and try to really lock in with the people that feel like they're as ambitious as you are, and get, build off of their energy, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, I think just, it's hard to do this shit alone, at least for me. And I think just being surrounded by people who are all excited and all constantly trying to do the same shit a little bit can be a good, just keeps the energy up, I think.
Well, Johan, it's been a pleasure, man. We at What's Out, myself, personally, really fuck with your music, bro. We'll always stay on the course and be like, yeah, no, that's what he's up to now. All right, cool. Any last shout outs, man?
Shout out to Shake for bringing me on this tour so that you would have heard about me. And I guess just shout out to all the people that are finding the music and telling their friends about it, because that's really what's going to make this work. And it's definitely been like a slow process, or it feels like it on my end anyway, but things are definitely coming together. And like, I want to be able to do arenas next year or 2 years, whatever it takes. So I think you know, and I want to keep telling these stories, I guess. So shout out to all the people who've said that, like, that they've, you know, that they really connected to some aspect of the story, or who cited a specific lyric or song as really speaking to them, like that. You know, the lyrics, we didn't really talk about lyrics tonight, but like that's such a big part of what goes into these records. And I think it's really important to me, and I'm glad people are kind of getting it. So yeah. Hell yeah.
It's been Johan Lenox. You can catch him on Twitch. You can catch him on Instagram. You can catch him on anywhere, man. You can catch him on Spotify, Apple Music, all that stuff. Yeah. Peace out. What's out? We out of here. Peace.
Bro, thank you.